Sic'Em 365 Radio. It's time for our weekly segment with Grayson Grundhoefer of Sic'Em365.com. Brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943.
So, I just want to start off here before we get to Grayson by saying thank you for hanging with us through that first segment. It was kind of weird with the sound. We have some new pieces of equipment that are not ours, and we got an announcement coming Monday about why we have these new pieces of equipment. We've got big doings happening here at 365 Sports and Sic'Em 365 Radio, but that piece of equipment, which none of us are really all familiar with, was acting up, and we had to call the person who it belongs to get them to help us walk through the issue. So thanks for hanging with us, and we certainly appreciate that. Craig, you wanted to read something real quick before we got to Grayson.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to it text quick, and I don't know if I can stick to the end of Grayson's, but so we'll hurry it up. But yeah. I did see somebody in the chat, and I couldn't catch the name scrolling through, but watch everybody once, like Ewers doesn't turn out to be good, everybody will say, I told you so. Like maybe Colin Cowherd and some of those dudes will say that. I promise you right now, the day that Ewers, about Sark, I'm sorry, it was about him getting fired. Once he gets fired later this year, that everybody will say, I told you so. If Sark gets fired, come back here the day that happens, and I will not be saying I told you so. I promise. I don't need to make myself like feel better or look good. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I just don't see a scenario that makes sense. And so that makes sense. Texas would do it because they are the off-the-wall decision makers. But I really think that with Del Conte, he knows, like, we can't keep flipping coaches. We can't have 3 former coaches that we're still paying while going and try to get another guy. So, I'll eat my words the day that happens later this year, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Sark's going to be in Austin for at least another season.
By the way, remind me in the break, I have to discuss something with you guys. An ice cream van just drove by, and they've been through my neighborhood, and I think it's a trap. But I just saw it. I would never buy ice cream out of it. Grayson, sorry for that lead-in, but I saw it and I had to mention it to alert the public that it's not an ice cream truck. It's just a van with pictures of ice cream that plays sounds on the outside. So beware of that. Grayson Grundhoefer joins us now. He would never be in a van like that or anywhere near it. Sic'Em365.com recruiting analyst. And Grayson, we've been talking Quinn Ewers for the first part of the show. Would you have been just floored had he not been the starter?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was one of those things where I think the moment that he decided he was going to Texas, it was kind of a foregone conclusion that he was going to be the starting quarterback there. I think the interesting part was that I really wasn't that high on Hudson Card coming out of high school. And then what I saw last year, I wasn't that impressed either. So for them to make that decision just kind of made me think, man, they must have zero confidence in their offensive line if they're going to go with the guy who's a little more athletic. Hudson Card, really, really good athlete compared to Quinn Ewers. But, Quinn is a guy with a big arm who I think takes that offense to another level with his ability to stretch the field and all those things. If they can give him time in the pocket, I think he'll be really, really good next year or this upcoming year. And so I think it's the right decision to make, and we'll see. It was interesting how it got announced, but I'm definitely not surprised by it. I think Quinn was going to be the guy the whole time.
All right, Grayson. Albany right around the corner. Finally, next week we'll be able to start talking about a game, albeit a game that I don't think anybody is fearing, that it should be quite the fun, like, hey, go, pay the team $200K to come take a butt whooping and then move on at 1-0 is kind of what everybody expects week 1 will be. But at this point in camp, I mean, the grind's been so long. What is still standing out to you at this point? Because Baylor doesn't have a big starting quarterback decision to make. Their lines are all cemented. I mean, where are you looking for news at this point?
Yeah, I think that the big positions that you're looking at are running back and wide receiver, just trying to solidify those things. I think we have a pretty good grasp on who the guys are going to be at those positions. But getting those locked in, I think, is going to be really important. And also, I think we always talk about the talent and who's the most talented guy and who's going to be the guy that is a game breaker in the offense. And I think the more important part is who's built a really good relationship with the starting quarterback, Blake Shapen. And if he's able to trust guys, I think those are going to be the guys that play. And maybe not necessarily the guys who are the highest rated coming out of high school or anything like that. It's going to be the guys that have that best connection with Shapen. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those guys improve and if they emerge over the next week or so. And then running back as well, trying to figure out, you have Squirrel and you have Tay McWilliams, but Richard Reese has been coming on recently as a guy to watch. And of course, you still got Jordan Jenkins in that room and Josh Fleeks as well. So I'm very curious how that sort of unfolds. But I think on the defensive side, things are pretty much solidified from what I can tell. I think their starting lineup is becoming more and more apparent. And I think that's a really good thing. And that'll form a lot of cohesion for that unit going forward.
Grayson, on the recruiting front, is there any news to report?
Yeah, nothing really. It's kind of one of those periods, and we've talked about this a little bit, but Baylor's at a point right now where they can be really, really selective with the guys that they show a lot of interest in and the guys that they really pursue to close out this class. And when you're at 24 commits, that typically is what happens. So I think they have about 2, maybe 3 spots left, and I think they're going to use those on guys who may be, not necessarily that they aren't on the radar, but more so that they might be committed to other schools or have a big offer list, or guys that Baylor gets in on late and are able to get on campus for an official visit maybe during the fall or something along those lines. So I think that's kind of where Baylor's at right now on that side of things. They're really focused on 2024 because the dead period ends here in the next 2 weeks. Right around that first game is when the contact period will open up where they can start calling, 2024 commits. So that'll be a big time period. So I think right now it's big about evaluations, trying to watch some game film. There's some tape coming out right now as guys are having their scrimmages and the season starts for high school next week. So that's going to be a big part of the process as well.
Do you still feel like they'll end up with a top 2025 class?
Yeah, with ease. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the top 25 part is almost already solidified. We've talked about that, but 220 points, I mean, you get to that number, and I think it's in the last 5 years, only 5 teams have not made the top 25 with that many points, and Baylor's already there. So for them to not finish in the top 25 would take an anomaly, essentially.
Grayson, you followed the recruitment of Austin Novosad really closely and, obviously talked with him plenty of times, and he finally shut it all down a week or two ago. How has that impacted this class? Has it just further solidified things, or was it always just kind of known by those guys committed that was ultimately going to be the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's solidified things, but I would also say that if you ask the guys who are committed in the class, I think they all felt really good about Austin remaining a Bear. And I think Austin felt good about himself remaining a Bear, even though he took visits and got multiple offers from, high-end schools. But for Baylor, in order to land a guy like that, you're going to have to fight some battles. And they did that, going up against Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Texas A&M, especially A&M where he's a legacy. That's a big deal. And Baylor was able to solidify things with him. And I think he's very comfortable with his decision and very excited about the future of the Baylor program as well. I know that he's going to be focused on the offense and trying to see how it develops and grows under Blake Shapen. I keep hearing, multiple media guys saying, what's Baylor going to do offensively? How are they going to, replace Gary Bohannon? And I just, I don't think a lot of people in the national media realize, how decisive it really was that Blake Shapen won that job, and that Shapen is an upgrade there and a guy who can take this offense to another level. And I think sometimes the national media discounts those things. And we talked a little bit about this when we were in the studio this week, but Baylor's offensive line and defensive line is something really, really special. And it's something that really happens only to the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Ohio States, where you have legitimately a top 5 group on both sides. That does not happen often. And I think they're going to do everything they can to create a really clean pocket for Shapen and allow him to take shots downfield. And I know Austin in particular is really going to be paying attention to that, because he's a guy that really wants to play in an offense that is going to run the ball well, but also give him opportunities to take shots downfield.
Grayson, finish this sentence. The first freshman that Baylor fans will notice will be blank.
True freshman?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Armani Winfield.
I thought
the wide receiver. I think that he's probably the guy that when you look at kind of how things have unfolded, I think he's going to be inside that top 5 or 6 group at the wide receiver position. And so he's going to get an opportunity to get on the field early and make some plays. And I think you'll see in the Albany game him have an impact. I don't know if it'll be at the beginning of the game or in the middle of the game or when, but I think he's going to be the guy that everyone kind of knows is first. He's the guy that on my radar has been like, okay, this is the guy as a true freshman who's going to come in and play very, very early. I will say the other guy to keep an eye on is Kelsey Johnson, just because of the situational diversity that he brings as an H-back. There's a chance you could see him really early in a game just because of the role that he fills, even though I think Armani will probably be more impactful throughout the year.
Grayson, just how you feeling, man, at this point? A little over a week to go. I mean, are you like everybody else of just let's get there already?
Yeah, I definitely am. And I know this past week we talked a little bit about what Baylor's record's going to be for this season and kind of, how things are going to shake out. And as the season's gotten closer and closer, and the more I read about other teams in the Big 12 and the more I see Baylor putting a product on the field that I think is going to be very, very good this year, the more I'm getting tempted to jump on that double-digit bandwagon and start to really think about, the future of Baylor this upcoming season. And I'm really excited to see kind of how things unfold for them. I think there's still a lot of questions to be answered. But I would also say that if you look around the Big 12, I don't think there's another team in the conference that is more set up to win the conference than the Baylor Bears.
Yeah, I think the thing that outside of the, inexperience at the skill positions, the thing that kind of hangs me up about going full tilt is if you could flip last year's schedule with home and road to this year, I'd probably be right there with you. It's just that road schedule is they could not have drawn a more, crazy places to go. Provo, Ames, Lubbock, the West Virginia, Norman, and Austin, all in 1 year. That, to me, if they can get through that, then, man, polish every trophy for that team that can get through that schedule.
Yeah, and, I agree with you, Paul, for sure. But I'm just, the more I start diving into this, the more that I've been kind of reading and paying attention, you know what travels on the road really well is an offensive and defensive line. And that travels no matter where you go. And Baylor really struggled on the road last year, so I understand the concern. I totally get that. But I personally think that was more of a function of a quarterback play than anything else. And I think Blake Shapen, as long as he's healthy, which no one can predict injuries. If you're going to bank on predicting a record based on a guy getting injured, you could do that with any team in the country for the most part. So as long as he's healthy, I feel really good about them being able to go on the road and win a lot of games because they're going to solidify things up front. And they're going to be probably the best offensive line on the field and the best defensive line on the field in just about every single matchup they go to. I'm not sitting here saying they're going 12-0 or even really 11-1, but I think they can definitely get to 10 wins fairly easily and find themselves back in the Big 12 championship again because of those reasons.
All right. Grayson Grundhoefer, Sic'Em365.com. Recruiting analyst Craig